The sun hung low over the city skyline, washing the glass towers in a golden glow, when Alastair Cromwell stepped out of his corporate headquarters with the same rigid confidence that had built his empire and broken countless souls along the way. The valet rushed to open the door of his obsidian black Bentley, its polished exterior mirroring a world Alastair believed he alone controlled. But just as he lifted one foot to enter the car, a small, trembling voice cut through the hum of traffic and froze him in place. One word, soft, cracked, desperate, rolled across the pavement and struck the coldest corner of his heart. Please, before we go deeper, if you believe in kindness, redemption, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Soul Moment Story. Your support helps these stories reach more hearts. The voice came from a boy no older than 9, standing barefoot near the curb, his dark skin dusty, his clothes loose and worn as though they had lived through more years than he had. His name, Alastair would soon learn, was Zaire. But for now, all Alastair saw was another child begging on another street, something he had trained himself not to notice, something he believed wasn't his concern. Alastair tried to ignore him. He signaled to the valet again. But the boy didn't step aside. Instead, he moved closer, clutching a torn backpack against his chest. The hope in his eyes clashed painfully with the exhaustion written across his body. And again, he whispered, "Please." This time Alastair's foot refused to step into the Bentley. Something in the boy's voice, something cracked, vulnerable, almost familiar, pulled him back. Without knowing why, he lowered his hand from the car door and turned fully toward the child. Zaire's gaze flickered upward, uncertain and shy. His lips parted to speak, but his voice caught as though he wasn't used to being listened to. Finally, with courage as thin as the breeze drifting through the street, he murmured, "Please, help my mom." Alastair felt a strange jolt inside him. Children usually begged for money, food, anything immediate. But this plea carried a weight deeper than hunger, Zaire explained in broken pieces. His mother, Morel, had collapsed that morning in their small apartment a few blocks away. He'd tried to wake her, tried to call for help, but no one had answered. The neighbors were gone. The landlord ignored him. And with no phone, no family nearby, and no money, he had run outside hoping, praying, that someone would stop long enough to see him. Alastair listened with arms tight across his chest, fighting the swirl of emotions trying to rise. This wasn't his responsibility, he told himself. He had a meeting in 30 minutes. He had a reputation to maintain. He had an empire that needed his control. But every time he tried to walk away, Zaire repeated the same word, each time softer, each time more painful. Please. It wasn't pity that broke Alastair's resolve. It was memory, buried, sealed, forgotten. He suddenly saw himself decades ago, a barefoot kid in a forgotten neighborhood, begging strangers to help his father who lay unconscious on their kitchen floor. And like Zaire, young Alastair had been ignored by dozens before one old woman finally stopped. The memory struck him so sharply he almost staggered. Without another thought, he told Zaire, "Show me." They hurried through narrow backstreets where the glamour of the city disappeared behind cracked walls, flickering lamp posts, and laundry lines swaying tiredly in the afternoon wind. The deeper they went, the more the air changed, less polished, more real. Alastair felt the weight of the past pressing against him with every step. Zaire's building was old, leaning slightly as if exhausted from holding itself together. Inside, the hall smelled of dampness and fading echoes of lives lived too closely together. The apartment door was ajar. And there, on a thin mattress on the floor, lay Morel, barely breathing, face pale beneath the streaks of sweat tracing down her temples. Alastair knelt beside her, surprised at his own urgency. He checked her pulse, her breathing, too shallow, too weak. His mind, trained to make decisions under pressure, snapped into action. Within minutes he had called emergency services, arranged immediate care, and then held Zaire's small shoulders when the boy began trembling with fear. At the hospital, once doctors stabilized Morel, Alastair sat in the waiting room beside Zaire. The boy leaned against him, small fingers gripping Alastair's sleeve as though afraid he might disappear like everyone else in his life had. For the first time in years, Alastair didn't feel like a CEO. He felt like a human being. As hours passed, something shifted inside him, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel since the day he'd crawled out of poverty, vowing never to return. But the truth he'd avoided his entire life now glimmered in the tired smile Zaire gave him. Empathy wasn't weakness. It was the only thing that made success meaningful. When the doctor finally emerged and said that Morel would recover, Zaire collapsed into Alastair's arms, sobbing with relief. And Alistair, despite his carefully guarded heart, felt tears rising uninvited to his own eyes. In the following days, Alistair returned repeatedly to see them, bringing food, arranging better housing, even helping Morel find steady work. It wasn't charity. It was connection, something he had unknowingly been starved of for years. Watching Zaire grow healthier, watching Morel regain her strength, Alistair felt his own life shifting in ways he didn't expect, but the biggest change came weeks later when Zaire hugged him tightly and whispered, "You're the first person who ever saw me." Those words struck deeper than the first please. Alistair realized that riches meant nothing if his heart stayed poor. And in that moment, he vowed to live differently, to build not just wealth, but compassion. As Zaire and Morel continued